My husband brought home a child. I raised him as my own, teaching him poetry, literature, and etiquette. I nurtured him into a noble young man skilled in both the literary and martial arts. Later, he rose to the highest position in the court, yet imprisoned me in a dark dungeon. His hands crushed my jaw. My birth mother, Shuang'er, was killed by you. A venomous woman like you, dare you call yourself my mother? My husband watched, hands pressed together. Shuang'er, may your spirit rest in peace. After being tortured to death, I was reborn. Facing the child my husband brought home, I still smiled and said, very well. From now on, he is my own son. Main text, I was reborn, returning to the time 7 years ago when I married Shuang'er. He brought home a young boy and said to me, Ruoruo, his parents died on the battlefield. Since we have no children of our own, why don't we adopt him? In my previous life, pitying this child without care, I readily agreed. But now, looking closely, though only 6 years old, his features already bore a striking resemblance to Shuang'er. He was no battlefield orphan, clearly the illegitimate child of Shuang'er and my dowry maid. I pretended ignorance, bending down to rub his little face. Very well. From now on, he is my own son. Child, what is your name? Still somewhat fearful of me, he whispered, Chi-Jin. Shuang'er explained, I named him along the way. Since he'll be raised in our household, I thought he should take the Chi surname. I smiled. Of course. As the sole mistress of the household, with Shuang'er taking no concubines and frequently away at war, the responsibility of raising and caring for the child fell entirely upon me. I recall in my previous life, Shuang'er would come to see Chi-Jin every other day. Sometimes he'd speak with him alone, asking if he was well fed and warmly clothed, if anyone had mistreated him. I assumed he was worried the servants might be harsh with Chi-Jin, never once considering that Shuang'er was actually guarding against me. Yet in this life, he trusted me with surprising ease. I continued tending to Chi-Jin with meticulous care, commissioning new garments from the finest fabrics and hiring a tutor to teach him reading and writing. Shuang'er was deeply moved. Perhaps Chi-Jin's arrival had rekindled his sense of home. As night deepened, he lingered over casual conversation, refusing to leave. In 7 years of marriage, our intimate moments had been few and far between. The last time was over 2 years ago. He'd suddenly gone wild, pinning me down and ravaging me. I couldn't resist, and the next day, the pain left me bedridden. What hurt even more than that night was the miscarriage that followed. That was already the second child I'd lost through my own carelessness. Feeling guilty toward the Chi family, I believed I'd been denied the blessing of children in this lifetime. So I treated Chi-Jin, whom he brought back, as my own child, pouring out my heart and soul to cherish and love him, eager to give him the very best the world had to offer. But the love I gave would one day become the blade that killed me. I would never, ever have any physical intimacy with Shuang'er again. Shuang'er's ardent thoughts radiated a scorching heat as he drew near my chest. He ran his fingers through my hair, his breath low and husky, Ruoruo, I want. The light's too bright. Pushing him away with feigned shyness, I retrieved a pair of scissors from the drawer and trimmed the candle wick. Shuang'er's gaze fell to the floor, his expression shifting abruptly. The sachets that tumbled out of the drawer had belonged to Shuang'er in life. Shuang'er was an orphan my mother rescued from the refugee slums. Later, she and Shuang'er became my bridal maids. Before our wedding, I sternly warned them both, you two grew up with me. When you find someone you love, tell me. I've prepared generous dowries for you both, so you can marry with honor and dignity. But there's one rule, my husband is mine. Regardless of other families' customs, you two must keep your place before me. Never harbor improper thoughts toward him. On our wedding night, I used playful words to lay down the law. Husband, Shuang'er and Shuang'er are like my sisters. Don't let their beauty distract you. Shuang'er paused, then laughed. No matter how beautiful others are, how could they compare to my wife's natural grace? But not long after, I discovered Shuang'er and Shuang'er in the woodshed. Both were undressed, hair disheveled, drenched in sweat, locked in passionate embrace. Shuang'er's hands had clawed several red marks into the broad, bronze-toned shoulders of Shuang'er. I demanded a divorce. Shuang'er pleaded with me, claiming Shuang'er had drugged him. He knelt on the ground, swearing by heaven and earth that I was the only one in his heart. Though divorce sounded noble, outsiders still blamed the woman, and her family bore the shame. Persuaded by my parents, I endured. Shuang'er was banished from the estate, her name becoming a forbidden word within its walls. It also became a name unspoken between Shuang'er and me, never uttered by either of us. The sachets she had made earlier were secretly hidden by Shuang'er. Little did we know that Jin, in his playful curiosity, had accidentally stumbled upon them. I deliberately placed the sachets in the drawer, never expecting they would prove useful so soon. I picked up the sachet, turning it over in my hands as I murmured softly, such familiar stitching. I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. I turned to look at Shuang'er. Husband, have you seen this? Shuang'er rested his hands on his knees, turning his head away with a face taut with tension. How could I have seen a woman's belongings? I blinked, looking at him with feigned surprise. He seemed desperate to prove his innocence, adding hastily, since it's not yours, have it taken out and burned. Very well. I had it taken out and burned. The lingering intimacy vanished like smoke. He shifted restlessly, then abruptly stood up. It's late, he said, you should rest early. With that, he strode away. I watched the direction he disappeared, my gaze hardening. Anyway, in less than 3 months, he'd be off to war. Before his departure, Shuang'er patted my shoulder and said, Ruoruo, you're the most virtuous woman in the world. With you taking care of the household and Genie, I have no worries. I smiled gently, rest assured. Unlike in my previous life, he didn't offer lengthy, earnest admonitions. This time, he seemed genuinely at ease. Before departing, he embraced me, then held Jin close. With that, he mounted his horse and rode off. I led Jin toward the back courtyard. Following the path of my past life, Shuang'er would face a grueling battle, returning only 6 years later. For those 6 years, I would be the sole master of the Qi household, backed by the Chen family. Doing anything to a 6-year-old child would be as easy as turning over my hand. To make Jin fall ill or have an accident, if I orchestrated it carefully, no one would suspect my hand in it. Even if Shuang'er grew suspicious of me later, he couldn't torment me, his legitimate wife, over a foster son without proof. Jin's chubby hand suddenly tickled me. I looked down, suddenly realizing he was only 6. So small his height barely reached my waist, so small his little hands could be easily cupped in mine. His large, pure eyes, like pieces of glass, gazed at me as he cautiously asked, Mother, can I skip reading today? He called me Mother. I couldn't deny my heart softened slightly. Those chubby little hands would one day grow long and elegant, with distinct knuckles. They would also lock me in a damp, gloomy cell, crush my jaw, and stare into my eyes, saying, A venomous woman like you, do you think you deserve to be my mother? The autumn wind whistled coldly, sending a shiver down my spine. I released Jin's hand and said softly, No need to study today. Go play ball. Jin danced with joy, skipping off happily. Admiring the nail polish on my hands, I thought maliciously, I couldn't possibly spend my days and nights studying with him like in my past life, nurturing him into a top scholar. If he was a fierce tiger, I'd start by clipping his claws. He loved to play? Then let him play to his heart's content. I had him taken to the market, buying him any toy he fancied. I even had the servants teach him cockfighting and cricket battles. Jin reveled in it all, growing ever more disinterested in his studies. The tutor came to complain, Madam, why hasn't the young master come to study again today? My expression darkened as I had a tray of silver ingots brought forward. Jinyu says your lessons are dull and tedious. He refuses to study and insists I find a new tutor. Alas, tutor, please take your leave. No sooner had the words left my mouth than a flying kuja ball bounced straight off the tutor's forehead. Jin hid in the distance, chuckling. The teacher stormed off in fury. For Jin's education, I had notices plastered everywhere, offering a hefty reward for a tutor. The entire capital knew how devotedly I, the mistress of the house, cared for my adopted son. In my past life, I was imprisoned, and Xiao Chui was sold to a brothel. The household servants feared Jin's authority. Even if they sympathized with me, they dared not come near. Only a girl named Sonlu secretly brought me food and medicine for my wounds. Sonlu was the granddaughter of Grandma Sun from the kitchen. After Grandma Sun passed away, young and helpless, I found her a light duty within the mansion. Out of gratitude for this kindness, she risked everything to steal the cell keys and help me escape. But betrayal thwarted my flight. To intimidate the household, Qi Jin beat Sonlu to a pulp right before my eyes. She was barely 20 when her young life was cut short. Recalling these events fills me with profound guilt. I went to the kitchen to find Grandma Sun. Grandma, you have a granddaughter named Sonlu, don't you? If you don't mind, consider me her adoptive mother. From now on, I'll cover all her needs, food, clothing, everything. I've also hired the best tutor for her. A girl must receive an education. Better to invest my efforts in someone more deserving than raising a wolf that won't be tamed. Qi Jin drove away 7 tutors in a row. Her reputation for being unruly spread, and gradually, no one was willing to come teach her anymore. Qi Yuanhui returned with a family letter. After offering perfunctory concern for me, he inquired about Qi Jin's studies. I replied, Jiner is healthy and bright. All is well at the estate. Do not worry. I also stewed Qi Jin's favorite braised pork hock, letting him eat his fill. Children grow fast. By age 10, he had become a sturdy, chubby lad, towering over his peers in both height and weight. I kept Truffle's status as my adopted daughter private, visiting her secretly whenever I could. She had blossomed into a graceful young lady, her every gesture already radiating the poise of a noble maiden. I had thought these quiet days would last another 2 years. But suddenly, news arrived. Qi Yuanhui was about to lead his victorious army back to the capital. Qi Yuanhui seemed to possess prophetic foresight, fighting battles as if guided by divine intervention. Not only did he repel the enemy forces, but he also reversed our dynasty's long-standing defensive posture. A war that had taken 6 years to conclude in my previous life was now finished in less than 4. His Majesty was overjoyed, personally going out to greet him and promoting him exceptionally to the rank of 3rd-grade General of the North. Yet in my past life, Qi Yuanhui had suffered heavy casualties in battle. Only through my father's intervention had he barely retained his 4th-grade general of the middle rank. I never imagined this life would bring such a reversal. While Qi Yuanhui was in audience with His Majesty, I waited outside the palace gates with Qi Jin and dozens of household servants. The emperor bestowed a pile of gold, silver, jewels, and 2 beautiful concubines. I had them settled in. Nearly an hour passed, yet Qi Yuanhui still hadn't returned. Didn't the general leave the palace? Why hasn't he come home yet? The servant sent to inquire returned with the news, Madam, the general said he still has urgent matters to attend to. This puzzled me. His affairs in the palace were settled, what could possibly be more important than returning home? Even if he didn't care about me, he should care about his son. That evening, the emperor hosted a welcome banquet. Qi Yuanhui was supported back by palace eunuchs, utterly drunk and reeking of alcohol. Shuang'er, I've wronged you. Now that I've achieved fame and fortune, I still can't. Burp. His eyes glazed over as he stared at me, lunging forward as if to embrace me. I deftly dodged him. Qi Yuanhui lost his footing and slammed his head into the doorframe. Leaning against the wall, he began vomiting violently. I had someone summon Qi Jin. Genie, this is your father. After so many years apart, he must miss you terribly. Go, speak with him. Qi Jin looked at me with obvious reluctance, hesitating several times before speaking, clearly unwilling to approach. I lectured him earnestly, you are 10 years old now, a big boy. You must be filial to your father. I picked up a cup of tea and urged, quickly, bring this to your father so he can rinse his mouth. After vomiting, Qi Yuanhui regained his clarity and recognized people. Seeing his beloved son after so many years, he called out, Genie. Qi Jin's face twisted with bitterness as he shuffled forward a few steps. But as he neared Qi Yuanhui, he suddenly flung the teacup away. He stinks! Qi Jin, the pampered young master I'd raised, couldn't bear such humiliation. He yelled, covering his nose as he ran outside. Truth be told, I found the smell repulsive too. Meeting Qi Yuanhui's disappointed gaze, I quickly said, General, please don't take offense. The child is still young. I'll go reason with him. I slipped away quickly. I feared I couldn't hold back my laughter. After 3 long years apart, finally seeing the son he'd longed for day and night, only to receive such a verdict, Qi Yuanhui must be heartbroken. Early the next morning, I took Qi Jin to pay respects to Qi Yuanhui. After much hesitation, Qi Jin reluctantly called out father. To quickly bond with him, Qi Yuanhui kept him behind to personally test his studies. Before long, deafening shouts erupted from the study, making the trees in the courtyard tremble 3 times. Your writing is crooked and messy, riddled with mistakes. You can't even recite the simplest poems. You know nothing about the Analects or the Mencius. How have you been studying? This was followed by Qi Jin's wailing sobs. I rushed in, heartbroken, and pulled Qi Jin close. He's still young. If he doesn't know something, he can learn. Why are you being so harsh? Qi Yuanhui was furious. He's already 10 and a half. What do you mean young? What kind of mother are you? Didn't you say he was bright? Qi Jin, frightened, cried until snot bubbles formed, hiding tearfully behind me. I had someone take Qi Jin away and explained gently to Qi Yuanhui, Genie is certainly bright, but he's lively and restless by nature. He just doesn't want to study. His high rank had inflated his temper, and he berated me without mercy. Shuang'er, don't tell me you're deliberately neglecting him just because he's not your biological son? Xiao Chui hurried to defend me. General, please don't accuse the lady unjustly. She's posted notices all over town seeking tutors for the young master's education. The young master has gone through 7 tutors already, yet he still shows no interest in learning. The mistress has worn herself out worrying. If the general doesn't believe me, just ask the servants in the mansion. They'll confirm whether this servant is telling the truth or not. Only then did Qi Yuanhui's expression soften slightly. I pulled out my handkerchief, blew my nose forcefully, covered my face, and dashed out the door. Later, Xiao Chui deliberately sought out Qi Jin and exaggeratedly told him how much I had endured in front of Qi Yuanhui today to defend him. In my past life, they were in cahoots, deceiving and hurting me. This lifetime, my first move was to drive a wedge between them, making Qi Jin despise his father. That evening, Qi Yuanhui knocked on my door. Ruoruo, I misunderstood you earlier today. I pinched my arm hard and cried through the door, if you distress me so deeply, let's part ways. At least you won't have to see me as a heartless woman. Of course I wanted to divorce him. But after years of marriage, I'd managed the household diligently while he was at war. If he divorced me now, people would surely criticize him. He understood weighing pros and cons to maximize his own gains. He'd never divorce me at this moment. Seeing I had no intention of opening the door, Qi Yuanhui offered a few perfunctory words of comfort before leaving. The 2 concubines stayed in his quarters. With no immediate border conflicts, Qi Yuanhui resolved to personally tutor Qi Jin in his studies. Alas, Qi Jin had long passed the prime age for early education. Accustomed to leisure and indulgence, he either dozed off or drifted off task whenever books appeared. Qi Yuanhui flew into such a rage he kicked the desk and tore the books to shreds. He ordered a cane brought forth and lashed it mercilessly across Qi Jin's back, forbidding anyone to intercede. You possess the makings of a top scholar. How could you be so utterly unambitious in this life? These words had burst forth from Qi Yuanhui in a fit of rage. At that moment, my guard was raised. Given Qi Jin's utterly unscholarly behavior, no one would ever associate him with the top scholar. Why did he dare claim Qi Jin had the makings of a top scholar? He also said, this lifetime. In my previous life, under my careful cultivation, Qi Jin did indeed become the top scholar. He was clever and adept at maneuvering. Leveraging the connections of the Chen and Qi families, he climbed the ranks until he reached the pinnacle of power. In this life, he only knows how to fight crickets, crawl through dog holes, and cry out for his mother. He likely doesn't even have the qualifications to take the imperial examinations. Other inconsistencies began to surface in my mind. Why was Qi Yuanhui so confident in entrusting Qi Jin to my care? Why was Qi Yuanhui, who had been incompetent in warfare last lifetime, now invincible on the battlefield? There was only one explanation: he too had been reborn. Armed with battlefield experience from his past life, he understood his enemies and himself, preventing crises before they arose. That's why he completed 6 years' worth of battles in just 4. He even harbors the delusion of molding his son into a top-ranked scholar. The moment he discovers my rebirth and suspects my intent for vengeance, eliminating me will be his first order of business. Qi Yuanhui, having earned glorious military merits and the emperor's favor, commands an army of 200,000. His power and prestige, like flames fanned by the wind, soar skyward, attracting ever more sycophants and flatterers. Unlike my previous life, he no longer had to constantly read others' expressions. He walked with his back straight, head held high, his demeanor transformed. Qi Jin lay bare-chested on the bed, wailing in pain. The moment he returned, he beat me nearly to death. Why did he come back? He should have stayed on the battlefield and never returned home. I wish I never had this father. Shoo! I hastily made a silencing gesture. Don't let your father hear you. He's a general who slaughtered countless on the battlefield. If you anger him, he might kill you. Qi Jin reluctantly shut his mouth. I applied medicine to his wounds, feigning concern. Even if he's not your biological father, he shouldn't beat you so brutally. Qi Jin didn't know he was his biological son. Qi Yuanhui, guilty as charged, dared not speak plainly, which gave me the perfect chance to sow discord. Qi Jin's gaze was icy, filled with obvious hatred. That was his nature, holding grudges, forgetting kindness. Mother, though I'm not your biological son, I treat you as my own mother. If father beats me again, you must save me. I replied, of course. We'll stand together, mother and son. While Qi Jin and I shared tender moments, Qi Yuanhui was deep in his debauchery. The two concubines sent by His Majesty, Luo Hua and Weiyu, pampered him to his heart's content. They even bet on who would conceive first. Qi Yuanhui initially reveled in their company, but soon grew bored. He challenged me. I spend every night with them. Aren't you jealous? They're gifts from His Majesty. How could I dare feel jealousy? Besides, more attendants serving the general is a blessing. As the legitimate wife, I must show magnanimity. Frowning in displeasure, he finally voiced the words bottled up inside him for years, speaking from a position of superiority. If that's the case, why did you drive Shuang'er away back then? The Qi Yuanhui of my past life would never have dared speak to me in such a tone. It was only in this life, with his high rank and power giving him confidence, that he dared question me like this. But he still twisted the truth as always. I didn't drive Xiao Shuang away. After Qi Yuanhui and Xiao Shuang slept together in the woodshed, I forced him to choose. He was the one who made Xiao Shuang leave the Qi residence, swearing never to see each other again. I always believed he and Xiao Shuang had truly severed all ties. It wasn't until I was locked in the dungeon that Qi Yuanhui revealed the truth. After leaving, Xiao Shuang discovered she was pregnant. Qi Yuanhui purchased a courtyard and secretly arranged for her to be cared for. When the child turned 3, thieves broke into Xiao Shuang's courtyard. Protecting her child, Xiao Shuang was killed by the robbers. Qi Yuanhui was devastated. When the child turned 6, Qi Yuanhui felt he couldn't let this boy live hidden away forever. He wanted to give him a proper upbringing. So he concocted a lie, bringing Qi Jin back to the mansion and falsely claiming him as the child of a comrade in arms. He made me raise a thankless wretch with my own hands. After Qi Jin passed the imperial examinations, Qi Yuanhui transformed into the image of a patient, long-suffering father. He brainwashed Qi Jin with exaggerated, distorted accounts of their past. He claimed he and Xiao Shuang had truly loved each other, but I had stolen her away, using my mother's family's power to bully the lowly Xiao Shuang in every way. He claimed that if I hadn't driven Xiao Shuang away, she wouldn't have endured so much suffering. She wouldn't have met a tragic death at the hands of bandits, dying with resentment in her heart. Xiao Shuang's death was all my fault. If not for me, their family of 3 would have lived happily together. Qi Jin wouldn't have been adrift in his youth, nor would he have come to regard a thief as his mother. I raised Qi Jin as my own son because I couldn't bear children myself. I forced Qi Jin to study and pursue an official career solely to gain power and status. How laughable. The day Qi Jin achieved fame and fortune was the day he came to hate me with every fiber of his being. He carved my flesh with a dagger to honor his birth mother's spirit in the heavens. Qi Yuanhui actually brought up Xiao Shuang this time. Suppressing my nausea, I said, I cared too much about you before, afraid other women would take you from me. But over the years, I've come to understand that loving someone means thinking of their best interests. As your lawful wife, I shouldn't be selfish and jealous. Qi Yuanhui patted my shoulder approvingly. It's good you've come to understand these things. Tomorrow I'll send someone to bring Shuang'er back to the estate. What? My eyes widened in shock. Wasn't Xiao Shuang dead? I nearly blurted it out. Hadn't she been killed by bandits when Qi Jin was only 3? Was Qi Yuanhui bluffing me? To avoid giving myself away, I forced my shock into a display of jealousy. What promise did you make back then? Have you two been hiding this from me all this time? I clutched my chest, overcome with grief. I never imagined that after all these years, you still couldn't forget her. I could keep your body but not your heart. Since you can't let go, let her enter the estate. I'd see for myself if Xiao Shuang was truly still alive. With my consent, light finally returned to Qi Yuanhui's eyes, and his demeanor toward me softened. Ruoruo, you're becoming more and more sensible. I'll stay here tonight. He spread his arms wide, gesturing for me to help him change clothes, as if it were some immense favor. I dismissed him, claiming I'd caught a chill. Dirty man. Not touching him. Only when Xiao Shuang appeared before me did I dare believe she was truly alive. On the day Qi Yuanhui returned victorious, he hadn't gone straight home, he'd secretly visited Xiao Shuang instead. Xiao Shuang wore a plain skirt, her face lightly powdered, her waist slender enough to fit in one hand. As she performed the kneeling bow, she seemed as if a breeze could knock her over. Shuang'er greets the lady. Luo Hua and Wei Yu sat below, each rolling their eyes. Xiao Sui stood behind me, muttering under her breath, shameful. Only I smiled gently, personally helping her up. You've served me since childhood, why such formalities? Blame my reckless youth. Shortly after my wedding, I found you and the general hidden in the woodshed, both stark naked. His crimson undergarments still hung on the firewood rack. I deliberately painted the scene with vivid, sensual detail before abruptly cutting off the story, leaving room for others' imaginations. Luo Hua Weiyu covered her mouth, giggling. Ah, never mind. I looked at Xiao Shuang with sincere eyes. All these years. You haven't held a grudge against me, have you? Xiao Shuang pressed her lips tightly together. Shuang'er dares not harbor resentment toward the mistress. That's good. I sat back down at the head of the table and said solemnly, I rescued you from the refugee camp. You were once my maid, but from now on, you shall be a proper concubine. Luo Hua and Wei Yu were assigned to the general by His Majesty. Even I must show them respect. You must get along well with them. I subtly accused Xia Shuang of ingratitude, deliberately elevating the other two concubines' status to give her a taste of her own medicine. At the time, I couldn't understand why Xia Shuang's fate diverged so drastically from my previous life. Later, it suddenly clicked. The problem must have been Qi Yuanhui. Qi Yuanhui had been reborn, but earlier than I. Armed with the lessons of his past life, he would never let his beloved die by bandit blades. Thus, he could prevent disaster before it struck, rescuing Xia Shuang in time. Qi Yuanhui cherished Xia Shuang like a precious treasure, enshrining her in the scenic Shuanghua garden and spending every night by her side. In the dead of night, suggestive sounds could be heard drifting out from within. Luo Hua Weiyu despised Xia Shuang and often joined in the chorus of criticism before me, their scolding growing increasingly heated. When we sisters stayed overnight with the general before, we still paid our respects to the lady in the morning without fail. What time is it now? Why hasn't that one come yet? Good riddance. I can't stand her whiny act. Who does she think she's playing the victim for? The general, of course. She's his darling. Sheds a few tears, and he'll coax her for hours. She seems awfully cocky to me. Always late for morning greetings, clearly doesn't respect the lady. I shifted sideways, propping my chin in thought. Having managed the Qi household these past years, my spies are everywhere within the manor. Since Xiao Shuang entered the household, she seized every chance to draw near Qi Jin, bringing him food, finding ways to strike up conversations, sometimes even hiding to watch him, looking as if she had something to say but held back. Likely Qi Yuanhui had privately cautioned him, the time for mother and son to reunite had not yet come. Beyond accompanying Xiao Shuang, Qi Yuanhui remained perpetually busy with official duties. Having lived a miserable existence in his previous life, where even revenge against me depended on his son, he would never let this chance to alter his fate slip away. The struggle between the Crown Prince and Prince Yu's factions raged fiercely. In the past life, Prince Yu had prevailed. To curry favor with the future emperor, Qi Yuanhui firmly aligned himself with the Yu faction. He declared his loyalty, built a faction for him, and even engaged in arms trafficking for his benefit. I silently observed all this, finding it rather amusing. His Majesty's health was still sound, his demise was still 7 years away. The situation remained uncertain, and the timing was not yet ripe. Acting too soon might not be wise. That day, Xiao Shuang arrived just as Qi Jin lost a cricket fight. Blaming her for his loss, Qi Jin vented his fury upon her. "Who wants your things? You annoying woman. Get lost. Don't let this young master see you again." That night, Qi Yuanhui went to Shuang'er garden, where Xiao Shuang wept and wailed all night. "Didn't you tell me the lady would raise Shuang'er well? Is this how uneducated he is now? How do you explain this? Speak up. Speak. After all these years apart, he doesn't even recognize me now. Why must my life be so bitter?" I listened impassively, then slipped 10 taels of silver to the servant who delivered the message. The next day, Qi Yuanhui sent me a large quantity of brocades and silks. All palace-grade fabrics, priceless treasures. You'll look stunning in garments made from them. I glanced at them dismissively. The colors are too old-fashioned. Send them to the Qin household, for my mother. Very well, as you wish. Qi Yuanhui, unusually submissive, suggested, "Your health has always been poor. Qi Jin is grown now, and raising him must be difficult. Why not formally adopt him under Shuang'er's name? When was my health ever poor? Oh, last time Qi Yuanhui wanted to stay the night, I claimed I'd caught a chill, and he said I was unwell. He urged, 'You're the mistress of the household. Regardless of who raises the child, you'll always be his nominal mother. If you miss Jinyu, you can see him anytime.' How about that?" Truthfully, I couldn't care less. But I still put on a show of reluctance, demanding Qi Yuanhui transfer half the estate's farmland into my personal name before I could bear to part with him. Qi Jin, who'd been carousing with a bunch of young nobles outside, went berserk upon hearing the news. He stormed in to confront me. "Mother, why are you abandoning me?" I deftly pulled out a handkerchief and began to weep. This trick I learned from Xiao Shuang. Luo Hua tried to reason with him, "Young master, how could mother possibly abandon you?" The general gave the order, mother had no choice. Wei Yu sighed, "Yes, mother raised you with such hardship and sacrifice. She's more heartbroken than anyone." I had thought Qi Jin depended on me somewhat and wouldn't want to leave. But his next words froze my heart completely. "My brothers told me long ago, only if mother keeps me as her son will I remain the legitimate heir. If I'm adopted under a concubine's name and become illegitimate, they'll look down on me forever." Luo Hua and Wei Yu exchanged glances and shook their heads silently. I dabbed at my eyes with a handkerchief. "It doesn't matter. Your father dislikes me. Who knows when he might elevate concubine Shuang to his main wife." "That's not the same," Qi Jin retorted loudly. "Mother comes from a noble family. What sort is concubine Shuang? A lowly servant, a base creature. How could she ever be my mother?" These words were overheard by Xiao Shuang, who had just entered. She'd come rushing over, thrilled to collect her son upon hearing Qi Jin's return, only to be met with this crushing blow. She froze, dumbstruck. I quickly cleared my throat. "Jin'er, how could you speak like that? Apologize to Mistress Shuang at once." Qi Jin snorted coldly. He strode up to Xiao Shuang and spat directly in her face. "Paw." He shrugged, then strode off with an air of superiority, his steps leisurely and self-important. Luo Hua and Wei Yu were dumbfounded. I was dumbfounded too. Truthfully, I'd never paid much attention to Qi Jin in this life. I hadn't taught him to read or write, nor had I instilled any sense of proper conduct. An ignorant person, incapable of concealment, would inevitably expose the full extent of their innate cruelty far too early. Seeing Shuang get her comeuppance gave me a sense of satisfaction. But Qi Jin's despicable actions also disgusted me. When Qi Yuanhui heard about this, he flew into a rage. He had Qi Jin hoisted up and mercilessly whipped with a whip. Qi Jin wailed and screamed. Shuang cried too, kneeling to beg Qi Yuanhui to stop the beating. I had no choice but to play along, pleading for mercy for Qi Jin. The sisters hid in the distance, secretly watching the spectacle. But this flogging served no educational purpose whatsoever. It only deepened Qi Jin's hatred for both himself and Shuang. Qi Yuanhui's face flushed crimson with rage as he pointed at him viciously. You're past the age for enlightenment. There's no hope for you in academics. Starting tomorrow, you'll train in martial arts with me. Qi Jin, spoiled by my indulgence, had never practiced restraint in eating or drinking. Much heavier than other children his age, he was hardly suited for martial training. He could barely manage a few movements before breaking into a sweat. Forced to hold the horse stance for 3 hours, he felt like his body was about to fall apart. Before the rooster crowed the next day, Qi Yuanhui yanked him out of bed by the ear. I suppose it was because I had taught Qi Jin so successfully in my past life that Qi Yuanhui had set his expectations far too high. He was determined to see his son achieve greatness and bring glory to the family name. But Qi Yuanhui, accustomed to swift and decisive action in the military, knew nothing about raising children. He lacked both the methods and the patience, rushing to see results and resorting to punishment at the slightest provocation. Under the relentless pressure of consecutive days, Qi Jin finally snapped. Seizing an opportunity when Qi Yuanhui was off guard, he suddenly grabbed a halberd and lunged at him. Blood poured from Qi Yuanhui's back as he stared in disbelief at the child he had poured his entire heart into. Held down by others, Qi Jin gasped for breath, screaming hysterically, I said I don't want to train. I don't want to. Why force me? If you want me dead, just say so. I'm just an adopted child to you anyway. You don't like me. Just have someone beat me to death. Qi Yuanhui gritted his teeth, consumed by rage, wanting to thrust the halberd into Qi Jin. Shuang, hearing the commotion, rushed over frantically and covered Qi Jin's mouth. Stop talking. Do you want to drive your father to his death? Qi Lang, Jiner is still just a child. Please don't take it out on him. Qi Huan was wounded both physically and emotionally, but what chilled him deeper was that Shuang hadn't immediately checked on his injuries. She'd worried he might harm Qi Jin instead. Qi Jin showed no gratitude toward Shuang. He shoved her away and attacked her with all his might, punching and kicking. It's all your fault. You wicked woman, go to hell. I was nearby at Shuanghua courtyard and witnessed the entire scene. Only after they'd nearly exhausted themselves did I appear, feigning urgency. Good heavens! What on earth happened? Qi Jin's stab hadn't been deep, so Qi Yuanhui's life wasn't in danger. He was merely incapacitated. Summer wounds were prone to infection, requiring careful tending. After examining him, the imperial physician checked on Shuang and prescribed some ointment for external injuries. I stopped the physician. Please examine Jinyu again. Qi Yuanhui had enforced family discipline on Qi Jin, leaving his buttocks raw and bleeding, a sight too gruesome to behold. The 3 of them were injured in perfect harmony. Qi Yuanhui dismissed everyone except me. Come here. As I approached, he suddenly grabbed my throat with a fierce, menacing glare. Qinshi, you've reincarnated too, haven't you? Raising Jiner like this, I should have suspected you long ago. This was all your scheme, driving father and son apart. Are you pleased? I couldn't admit it. Before delivering the fatal blow to my enemy, I couldn't let him guard against me. He was merely speculating, with no evidence whatsoever. I gambled he wouldn't dare kill me. Qi Yuanhui's grip was incredibly strong, as if he intended to strangle me to death. I couldn't even form a complete sentence. My feet gradually lifted off the ground. I was suffocating. A young girl's voice came from outside. Please let me in. This is the medicine the lady personally stewed for the general. She said it must be drunk hot to be effective. Hearing this, Qi Yuanhui froze momentarily before finally releasing his grip. I collapsed to the ground, coughing violently for a long while before finally gathering the strength to rage. Qi Yuanhui, what nonsense are you spouting? Are you out of your mind? I came here with good intentions to see you, and you go completely mad. Seeing my reaction, Qi Yuanhui murmured to himself, could it be that because of me, one variable, everything else has changed too? After convincing himself, he exhaled deeply, his expression softening. Ruoruo, I'm sorry. I lost my mind just now. Don't blame me. Fighting back tears, I shoved him away. As Qi Yuanhui touched me, the wound on my back tore open, blood slowly soaking through my clothes. He called the person outside in. A young girl bowed her head, presenting a bowl of medicinal broth. Qi Yuanhui asked, you say this medicine was personally stewed for me by the mistress? Yes, this medicine requires 2 hours of simmering. The mistress rose before dawn and specifically instructed me that if it cools, it will affect its efficacy. The girl answered timidly before retreating. She never once raised her head. Qi Yuanhui's expression softened. Ruoruo, I misunderstood you. How could I endure such treatment? Furious, I stormed back to the rear courtyard, packed a few things, and took Xiaochui back to my maternal home. I'd longed to return home for some time. The items I'd gone to such lengths to collect would finally serve their purpose. Besides, Qi Yuanhui now harbored suspicions toward me. Keeping them in the Qi residence was a hidden danger. With the support of the Prince of Yu, Qi Yuanhui was thriving in the imperial court, his audacity growing by the day. Had he truly wanted to strangle me just now, it wouldn't have been impossible. Afterward, he'd simply fabricate evidence and concoct an excuse. With his men in the Ministry of Justice and the Prince of Yu's influence, he'd find ways to cover it up. Even if my parents suspected something, they couldn't stand up to him. Thankfully, Sonlu appeared just in time. I never personally brewed medicine for Qi Yuanhui. Nor did I rise before dawn for his sake. Sonluo isn't just loyal and kind, she's exceptionally clever and quick-witted. Otherwise, she wouldn't have managed to steal the key in my past life, nearly succeeding. I told her to avoid Qi Yuanhui and not reveal her status as my adopted daughter, and she did both. After returning home, I told my parents about Qi Yuanhui's recent actions. Father first flew into a rage, then grew deeply uneasy. One quiet midnight, disguised in disguised, I was brought into the palace by my father to personally present myself before His Majesty. Qi Yuanhui sent people to my door to invite me back. My parents scolded him for lacking sincerity. I put on airs for several days, only reluctantly returning when he personally came to fetch me. Because of the matter with Qi Jin, Qi Yuanhui and Xiao Shuang had grown estranged, frequently arguing. It was Luo Hua and Wei Yu who, without complaint, served Qi Yuanhui his medicinal soups and medicines, deeply moving him. During my absence, Qi Yuanhui took turns staying in their rooms. That night, Qi Yuanhui came to mine again. Ruoruo, you seem much more distant toward me now. Huh? You used to call me husband. Since I returned from the battlefield, you've only called me general. He lowered his gaze to look at me, his eyes holding an ambiguous emotion. Oh, really? I replied dismissively. It's just a title. It matters. Qi Yuanhui suddenly leaned in, clasping my hands. I still prefer hearing you call me husband. What was he up to now? I pulled my hands away, staring at him speechless. Ruoruo, I used to think you were proud and willful, stubborn and jealous. But now that you've become more magnanimous, I find myself unaccustomed to it. You personally brewed medicine for me. You still care about me, right? I'd eaten too much at dinner and now felt queasy. I glanced toward the door. Why were they taking so long? Finally, Xiao Shuang's personal maid arrived. General, Auntie Shuang hasn't slept well or eaten properly these past few days. Please, go see her. These nights, the candle in Xiao Shuang's room burned constantly. If Qi Yuanhui didn't come, she would wait forever. Qi Yuanhui hesitated for a few moments, but went anyway. The next day, Xiao Shuang arrived late for her morning greetings, looking as if she were too precious to bear. Privately, Luo Hua sympathized with me, spitting out, what kind of person is she? Does she think the general is hers alone? Competing for his favor with us is one thing, but to dare challenge the lady herself? Wei Yu replied, we sisters never intended to compete with the lady for his favor. Serving the general these past days, we only hoped to conceive, to have some hope for the future. Luo Hua sighed, fate is not in our hands. We know the general cannot be relied upon, our only hope lies in having children. Men and children. They may not be reliable either. I said with a bitter smile. Only oneself can be relied upon. Seizing the moment, I recounted my 2 miscarriages. Wei Yu asked in surprise, Madam, the physicians initially said your pregnancies were fine. Why did you miscarry so soon after? I replied, the general had people bring me pregnancy-preserving medicine daily. It tasted bitter and sour, yet I drank bowl after bowl to no avail. I suppose our descendants' fortune is thin. My body is no longer suited for bearing children. After hearing this, the 2 exchanged a silent glance. Having come from the palace, they understood such tactics well. A mere hint from me was enough for them to grasp the situation. They kept their wits about them and soon discovered something amiss in the medicinal soups Qi Yuanhui had given them. Drinking that concoction made pregnancy impossible. Long-term consumption would also damage the body. Luo Hua lamented bitterly, if he doesn't want me to bear children, he should simply refrain from touching me. Why must he harm me? Wei Yu trembled with rage. I had someone secretly investigate. Consort Shuang's medicine is harmless. It seems the general only wants Consort Shuang to bear his children. Pa. Lust-blinded and unable to control himself, yet he pretends to be deeply devoted to concubine Shuang. Disgusting. That's not right. Wei Yu's eyes darted. If the general forbids us from bearing children and favors only concubine Shuang, why does he place such high hopes on the adopted Qi Jin? Just as I was about to speak, Xiao Chui rushed over and whispered in my ear, bad news. The general has captured Songlu. When I hurried to the front hall, Qi Yuanhui sat majestically on his pearwood chair. Songlu was bound and gagged, shaking her head at me. She said nothing, but I understood. Qi Yuanhui slammed his teacup down and sneered, the mistress arrives most conveniently. It seems your spies are everywhere in this household, eh? I sat down on a nearby chair and cleared my throat. As the head mistress of this household, I oversee its affairs. It is only proper that the servant's report matters to me. Then I pressed, what crime did she commit? Why was she arrested? A sneer spread across Qi Yuanhui's face as he pressed further. Songlu came from humble origins, relying solely on Granny's son. How could she afford food, clothing, and a tutor? My private investigation revealed the truth, you secretly used your dowry to support them. I'm curious, with so many unfortunate souls in the world, why did the mistress single her out for such special care? That young maid who appeared just in time to bring me medicinal soup that day, was that Songlu? I remained silent, my eyes fixed on him without blinking, waiting for him to continue. Truthfully, it wasn't Songlu who first aroused my suspicions. Qi Yuanhui folded his arms behind his back. I was seeking a capable person, which led me to think of Ah Jian. Little did I know you'd already expelled him from the estate 3 years ago under some flimsy excuse. He leaned closer, his gaze intense. Madam, why did you drive him away? What did he do to offend you? Yes, he had offended me. In my past life, Ah Jian betrayed me, preventing my escape. Meeting Qi Yuanhui's gaze without flinching, I parted my lips, a traitor who sold his master for glory. I've shown him mercy this lifetime by not taking his worthless life. Ha 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 ha. Qi Yuanhui straightened, laughing with unrestrained delight. Madam, you finally admit it, you've reincarnated too. His laughter turned maniacal, his gaze darkening with malice. After playing along for so long, you must have a grand scheme in motion, right? I slowly adjusted my sleeves, replying calmly, not grand. You've seen through it all. I'm disappointed. Qi Yuanhui waved his hand, signaling for someone to take Songluo away. But he was more tense than I was. You remodeled that study wall. There's a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf. Letters I placed on the shelf could be silently removed from the secret compartment and returned without a trace. That chestnut horse I often ride when going out, I only discovered today a hole in its saddlebag. It contained a powder that glows in the dark. You had someone tail me. Qinsher, how many of my secrets do you hold? He lunged forward, gripping my shoulders with murderous intent in his eyes. Speak! Who else have you told? Your father? The crown prince? Impossible. A woman like you couldn't possibly have access to the crown prince. I flashed a dazzling smile, deliberately provoking him. Who do you think I'd tell? Take a guess. I've made countless copies of your incriminating evidence and scattered them throughout the capital. Shuang'er's rage overwhelmed him. He suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the floor, convulsing. I frowned in disgust. My newly tailored dress is ruined again. Poison had been slipped into Shuang'er's tea. The culprit was swiftly identified. Qi Jin stared impassively at Shuang'er, now covered in needles. Concubine Luo and concubine Wei told me you only wanted children with concubine Shuang. Once you have your own child, you'll surely abandon me. If you die, there will be no other children. The general's mansion will be mine. Unable to move much, Shuang'er's eyes bulged with rage, his voice trembling. You ungrateful son. I'll cut you down. Xiao Shuang suddenly darted out from somewhere, clinging tightly to Qi Jin and wailing, Jiner, you are our biological child. He's your real father, I'm your real mother, you're our flesh and blood. Don't let that woman deceive you. Qi Jin, unable to accept the truth, shoved her away. Get lost. I'm not your child. Everyone calls you a whore. Qi Jin looked at me with desperate hope. Mother, say it. Tell me I'm your son. I shrugged indifferently, waved my hand, and had him taken away. The general is in no state to attend court. Send someone to the palace to report his absence, tell them the truth. Xiao Chui acknowledged the order. Yes, sir. The general was poisoned by his illegitimate son and is bedridden. Shuang'er pointed weakly in the direction Xiao Chui had left. Don't what? Afraid people will find out you have an illegitimate son? Or afraid Qi Jin's future will be ruined? I leaned down and patted his cheek, continuing my psychological assault. You treated him like your own son, but he never saw you as his real father. The pain of being betrayed by those closest to you, this lifetime, it's finally your turn to bear it. Veins bulged on Shuang'er's neck. You venomous woman. This poison was originally prepared by Shuang'er to force a confession from me. It wasn't lethal. After ingestion, it would cause numbness in the limbs, rendering one immobile, like fish meat on a chopping block, helplessly at the mercy of others. Fortunately, I caught it in time and switched it out, cleverly slipping the real poison into Qi Jin's hands. I locked Xiao Shuang in Shuanghua Garden, forbidding anyone to visit her. Qi Jin, witnessing my thunderous methods, was terrified. He knelt and begged me, Mother, you are my mother for life. Don't abandon me. I nudged his shoulder with my embroidered slipper. Fine. If you carve a piece of flesh from your father's body every day, I won't kill you. Murder violates the law, how could I possibly kill him? Qi Jin believed me and did just that, day after day. Through the door, I could hear Shuang'er's wretched cries, shrill as the wail of a wronged spirit. I never imagined I'd become so ruthless. But this was all from my past life, what they inflicted upon me. Qi Jin locked me in the dungeon, ordering them to carve a piece of flesh from me daily. That alone was enough to make me wish for death. Court ministers came to visit, but I turned them all away. Soon. Not long now. 5 days later, the imperial guards kicked open the Qi mansion gates. Blazing flames lit up the night sky. Shuang'er colluded with the Prince of Yu, secretly stockpiling arms. The evidence was irrefutable. Paralyzed in bed, he was dragged away by 2 guards, still spewing venom. Shuang'er, this is a crime punishable by extermination of 9 generations. I may die, but you won't escape. The Jinui commander approached and said to me, Madam, your contributions were indispensable in securing General Qi's incriminating evidence so swiftly. Treason warrants the execution of 9 generations, but His Majesty rewards and punishes with discernment. He has graciously permitted you to divorce your husband. You are not counted among the Qi clan's 9 generations. I wept with gratitude, overjoyed. It wasn't him divorcing me, nor was it a mutual separation, it was I who divorced him. Shuang'er's eyes blazed crimson, his body trembling. This time, I was the victor. Following the imperial guards to record the testimony, I learned His Majesty had long harbored suspicions about Qi Yu and Huai. Beyond Luo Hua and Weiyu, the Qi residents harbored other spies. How could the emperor not guard against a general commanding 200,000 troops? No wonder when I secretly entered the palace to expose Qi Yu and Huai's crimes to His Majesty, he showed no surprise. He seemed entirely prepared. In other words, had I not exposed Qi Yu and Huai's crimes, I would have been implicated. The faction of Prince Yu faced decapitation or exile. The prince himself was stripped of his title and reduced to commoner status, forever barred from succession. The succession struggle involved too many officials. The emperor, unwilling to escalate bloodshed, released all those not directly implicated, sparing even the relatives of the guilty ministers. Luo Hua and Weiyu, having been placed in the palace by the emperor himself, could no longer remain as palace maids and were also released. Qi Jin should have been implicated. Yet Qi Yu and Huai had rendered meritorious service to the state. The emperor, distinguishing clearly between merit and fault, granted him one final wish before his death. Qi Yu and Huai's wish was to have me killed. The emperor refused, rebuking him fiercely. Qi Yu and Huai amended his wish, spared Qi Jin's life. Considering Qi Jin's youth, the emperor granted it. Only Shuang'er, as kin to a convicted traitor, remained imprisoned with Qi Yu and Huai as doomed lovers. When I departed the palace, Grand Eunuch Gao came to see me off. Miss Qin, you are wise and courageous, sacrificing kin for justice. His Majesty decrees that the Qi family's estate shall be bestowed upon you. I hastily knelt to express my gratitude. Eunuch Gao flicked his whisk and murmured, His Majesty is aware of the young master of the Qi family poisoning Qi Yu and Huai. Though still young, his nature is wicked. I urge Miss Qin to keep a close watch on him. I nodded in agreement. Returning to the Qi residence, everything remained the same, yet the people had changed. Finally, before the entire household, I formally recognized Sonlu as my adopted daughter. From now on, you are my precious daughter. Are you happy? Yes. She flashed me a sweet smile. Mother! Luo Hua and Weiyu had nowhere else to go, so I let them stay at the Qi residence. As for Qi Jin, he remained a constant headache. He frequently ran off to hang with street thugs, only returning when he needed money. Sometimes he even stole from the household. Just as I was pondering how to deal with him, Xiao Chui rushed over. Miss. Hurry to the lake. Young master pushed you in. I was not far from the lakeside and arrived quickly. Seeing Song Luo, soaked to the skin, I breathed a sigh of relief. As long as she's okay. Scented truffle pointed toward the lake, gasping for breath. Mother, master pushed me into the lake. Thankfully, I can swim. I swam up, but he pushed me back down. So I just pulled him in after me. Following her gaze, I saw Qi Jin flailing in the water. He couldn't swim. A servant who could swim had already shed his shoes and shirt, swimming toward Qi Jin. But Qi Jin drifted farther and farther away, only half his head still visible above the water. If I gave the order to call the servant back, he would be completely swallowed by the lake. My heart was torn. Save him? Or not? I didn't know what to do. It felt like no choice was right. Soon, Qi Jin vanished beneath the lake's surface. After what felt like an eternity, he was dragged ashore, unconscious. Many rushed to perform chest compressions and slap his cheeks, but he showed no response. His face was deathly pale, utterly lifeless. I watched it all numbly. Until someone approached me and said, Miss, please compose yourself. The young master has passed. I couldn't describe my feelings. I drew a long breath and crouched down, hugging my knees. Everyone, please leave. I need to be alone. 2 lifetimes of grudges and enmity, it all felt like a great dream. Those who betrayed me, those who hurt me, they were all finally dead. Only my feelings toward Qi Jin in this life remained tangled and ineffable. Had I piled all the resentment from the past life onto him in this one? Was that right or wrong? Good people have this damn flaw, they easily become shackled. I slapped myself. He was dead anyway, I should just let it go. He'd harmed me with the truffles first. He deserved it. I stood up and started walking forward, intending to call someone to collect the body. Suddenly, a chillingly cold male voice came from behind me. "Where are you going, mother?" My heart seemed to skip a beat as I whirled around. Qi Jin stood before me, completely unharmed, a sinister smile playing at the corners of his lips. That tone, that expression, I would never forget them for the rest of my life. I stumbled backward in fright, only to be caught by his hand. He called out again, "Mother. Long time no see." It was Qi Jin, the Qi Jin from my past life. The Qi Jin of this life was dead, but the Qi Jin of the past life had returned. Though he inhabited this 12-year-old body, his aura was utterly different. Each step toward me carried an overwhelming, intimidating force. No matter how strong I'd become in this life, the memory of being locked in that dungeon flashed through my mind. When the true culprit stood before me, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine, my hair standing on end. He circled behind me when I wasn't prepared, clamping down on my hands while his other arm tightened around my neck, the pressure growing relentless. "You denied me education, deliberately crippled me, drove us to turn against each other. You're quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? Do you think you won gloriously, beautifully? If I hadn't been reborn, you wouldn't stand a chance against me. You poisonous bitch." His grip tightened relentlessly. Just as I was about to suffocate, he suddenly released me. I turned to see Truffle plunging the golden hairpin in her hand into Qi Jin's shoulder blade. Qi Jin turned back in disbelief, his eyes bloodshot, looking as if he wanted to devour someone. Luo Hua, Wei Yu, and Xiao Sui also rushed over, working together to restrain the injured Qi Jin. Song Luo, frightened, let go of her grip and asked how I was. I asked, "Why were you two nearby too?" "You wanted to be alone. We were all worried about you, so we kept watch from a distance." My heart warmed. I exhaled deeply, pulled out my own hairpin, and said, "Songlu, close your eyes. Mother is about to kill someone." Step by step, I walked toward Qi Jin. Even if you spent a lifetime studying the classics, you'd still end up blind to right and wrong, repaying kindness with betrayal. In this life, you are unworthy of learning. Allowing a worthless, unfilial wretch like you to live is the greatest mercy I could show. How dare you show your face here? As many times as I am reborn, I will kill you that many times. Until you finally learn to be a decent human being. With each word I spoke, I thrust the hairpin into Qi Jin's body, carefully avoiding vital organs. He ultimately died from the agony. Luo Hua and Wei Yu watched my near-mad actions and couldn't help but plead, "Sister, stop. He's already dead." "All right." Exhausted and gasping for breath, I tossed the blood-soaked hairpin aside and collapsed onto the ground. Luo Hua went to the magistrate's office to register Qi Jin's death, recording the cause as drowned. I had the mansion completely renovated, erasing all traces of its past. The Qi residence plaque was removed. On an auspicious day, we hung the Qin residence plaque with lanterns and decorations, accompanied by gongs and drums. The Qin residence had me. It had my precious daughter, Truffle. And it had my dear sisters, Falling Blossom, Light Rain, and Little Chui. We opened a cloth shop in the east and a tavern in the west. Xiao Sui became utterly absorbed in running the businesses, turning them into thriving enterprises. In our leisure hours, we drank beneath the moon, played music and danced, and sought plum blossoms through the snow. This mansion, filled only with girls, even had sweet-smelling air. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next chapter.